He came to our trustee meetings and he was like, well, I got the letter, but I thought it was just for people.
Yeah.
No, if you're in the area.
Well, the one
I started the recording a little early and there's already some comments.
okay, thank you.
Oh, no, I'm just I was gonna make sure the camera was in a good spot.
Eric and John, they worked out the biggest sign they possibly find.
After all this food,
I started doing something when they started. Well, that's her name. Yeah. How you doing? Matt. I got Matt on my mind. Hey, Lower just called me. That's all. He's over to the work. He's trying to campaign for the
he helped me out. He went deep. You're having a good time. And he said, no, so the surveyor had to go down and take me out. He got it done, he got it done that night, he had it in my hands for about 2 hours. How can that do that anyway?
How can you do that? See, right? You see it. Like that purple. Represents the community there. Get your hey, that's good. Our football team's not going to have it.
I don't think it's cool.
Thank you. Welcome in, everybody. Hi there.
I'm just running this, that's all.
This is just a little bit of our Jackson.
Yes, he's way out there. He might have gone from.
Get started so that you can get out of here, right? Got it. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you so much. I know it's an evening, and I know it's your time, and hopefully you're going to learn some things and have a bunch of questions when we're done. Hopefully, if you're in the pink area, you get a chance to sign up. But first, I wanted to introduce a couple of the people that made these things possible. That Montgomery County and Butler Township have been working together in order to set up this program to get some of you free water testing. So I'd like to introduce some of those people who have made this possible. So Montgomery County first, Matt Hilliard, who's the Director of Environmental Services. So now you know you can pick on when we're done here. Megan O'Leary, she's there in the back. She's the Public Information Officer from Montgomery County. Tiffany Petrie, who was out at the desk, and maybe you saw her, she was the lady who sat very close to the door. She's the project manager, and since she's not in here, it's her job to keep me in line, so maybe we can have some fun. So next, they're all here. That's how much they care about this project. And so, Mike. And Missy Trzynski. I never get it. So if you have questions for them, also Erica Vogel, who's the township administrator. So those are your local people to contact if you have questions. That little QR code will help you sign up if you haven't signed up and you like, the fancy stuff where you take your phone and you go, and then a survey comes up. Or if you leave here and you don't have a chance to sign up, or you have neighbors that haven't signed up and you're going to say, hey, this is a really good thing, please do this, then that HTTPS up there will get you there as well. Okay, so that's me. I'm Linda Aller. I'm a geologist. I work with Bennett & Williams. We're the one that has the contract to do some things, and I'll tell you a little bit about all the things that we're going to do, but the most important thing is we're going to test your water. Carrie Zawiski, she was the one with the English accent that kind of sat out there at the table. She's actually an engineer, and came in, you might have seen him, he was kind of guarding the door. He kind of looks like the bouncer, If your wells are going to be sampled, you'll see either Cayman and I and somebody else. And then Sarah, she was kind of like hidden back out there in the corner. She had the bangs. And she is a biologist, and she's the one, if you want to be impressed, that programmed the survey if you go up on the web and look at it. So yeah, she has talents I could just dream of. Okay, so here's what I want to run through today. And this is like jam-packed, okay? Some of you have heard this before, so if you've heard it before, you're allowed to sleep through small portions with no snoring, okay? So here we go. What are PFAS? How do we What are PFAS used for? Where are PFAS found? Exposed to PFAS? What are the potential health effects from PFAS? What about these concentrations of PFAS if I have them in my drinking water? And rest assured, it's not in everybody's. Where does my water come from? Well, it comes out of my well, but then I got a bigger thing to talk about. How do I get my water tested? Okay, that's sign up on that code thing. And then what's the tenant? And then we have questions. Okay, so here we go. I thought I should start with history because these PFAS things, they're all started by a guy who lived in Ohio. I mean, like he could have been like anywhere, but he was in Ohio. So this is Dr. Roy Plunkett. He was born in New Carlisle in 1910. He was a research chemist for DuPont, and he had a failed experiment in 1938 that really started all of this and made whatever problems we have now and a lot of money for a lot of companies in between. So this white waxy material that he ended up with in this failed experiment would become known as Teflon. And if any of you are a little bit older, you will know that in the 60s, Teflon was the latest, greatest thing since sliced bread. Oh my gosh, your food didn't stick to it and whatever. So in 1962, we saw that reach the commercial market, and Plunkett retired from DuPont. He stayed there. I don't know whether he had any more failed experiments or not, but so that was just kind of fun. Okay, so what in the world are PFAS? Well, they're per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And if you don't like chemistry, that's probably about as far as you ever want me to go. As I said, they've been around since World War II. They're known to repel greases, oils, they're waterproof, heat resistant. But what PFAS really are is they have these carbon fluorine bonds. They're the strongest bonds known to man. And once they get stuck together, they don't want to come apart. That's what makes these things known as forever chemicals. Now, there's some new experiments, and there's something new in the paper every day that says maybe they figured out a way to make some of these things go away. But for now, we're still going to call them forever chemicals because there's 12,000 of them. We're going to talk about, I don't know, 18, 2, depending on what aspect we want to talk about. So it's a whole lot more complicated by the time the scientists figure it all out. And if you don't like science changing things, well, then don't follow PFAS, because when I first got into this in 2002, I read every technical article there was. Now I can't even read the headlines in a day, okay? That's how much the science has expanded and how much we're starting to learn. And as we learn, it's not particularly good. Okay, so how did we get here? Well, in 2020, the governor of Ohio put out an edict that said, hey, EPA, I want you to go out and test about 1,550 public water supplies. And I want you to test them for PFAS. And I want you to test them for 6 different PFAS. Okay? So the EPA, in the middle of COVID, which is when they started, they didn't quite make their deadlines, but they did. They went out and tested all these things. And what they found was that 2 different systems in Ohio had levels above what the US EPA said would be safe from a health perspective for 2 chemicals called PFAS and PFOA. So PFOA and PFOS. Based on that, you all know that Allwood was one of them. Bridgeport over by Steubenville was another one. They have a different supply now too. But that's what prompted the water line to be run to Allwood because they have the daycare center there. That's one of the big reasons that they were tested in the first place. So now they have a water supply that doesn't have PFAS in it and clearly does not click this magic number that was in effect at that time. So by January of 2001, the health department had put together, the state health department had spearheaded, and they said, oh my gosh, you know, this is an area around Allwood. Allwood has this well, but all these other people, they don't live on city water out here. They all have private wells. So we're going to go out and test the private wells and see if it's in the private wells too. So the state health department did 3 different rounds of testing. They sampled 49 private wells in January, March, and May. And they were trying to figure out how far out they had to go so they didn't have any more PFAS. And they issued this July 1st letter, which I'm sure some of you got if you're in the pink area, that said, this is a citizen advisory letter. And if you live in that pink area, you live in the recommended well sampling area. So they found PFAS and PFOA, the same things that were in Allwood. They found them in 5 of the wells of the 49 that they tested. That tells you it's not everywhere and not in everybody's well. But they were all below that 70, and that 70 is what caused Allwood to be above the action level that Ohio had set. So nobody's were above the action level, but they still recommended that all residents in that pink area having their well tested for PFAS. Okay, so July 14th, 2022, Montgomery County, working with Butler Township, had obtained funding. They had put out a public bid for people who were interested in doing this project, and we had the pleasure of being selected to do this project, and that's when we got. So phase one, that's kind of where we're in right now. We had to compile information on public health effects. If you guys have been up on the Butler Township website, there is a document that talks about health effects. If you're interested and you want to know about, can't remember everything I said, or yeah, you slept through this, or you want to know more on a different day because you just can't absorb it all tonight, go to the website. Butler Township has it hanging. We needed to hold public meetings for well sampling sign up. Aha, this is number 2, okay? To compile information on treatment options, costs, and effectiveness for private water systems. So this goes to, oh, if I have it in my water when you test it, what do I do? So options under the sink, whole house, or bottled water. And we actually have developed that. It's out for internal review. And when it's done, it will also hang on Butler Township's website. So regardless of whether you're in the pink area or outside the pink area, those things are things that will help anybody that's in the township that might have an issue or want to make a decision. So prices and everything. Okay, then phase 2, which will be there before, it is sample private water systems in that pink area. So if you're in the pink area, you can have your water tested for free. And then after we get done with that and get the results back, we're going to be conducting a water quality analysis of nearby municipal public water systems and provide a long-term potable water source recommendation to the township. So that's the scope of what we're doing. But the exciting part is coming out and testing wells. Some help. Okay, so why should you even be concerned about PFAS? And the reason is this one right here. Your single biggest exposure comes through water. I'm going to tell you you're exposed to PFAS in all kinds. But if you don't remember anything else, your single biggest exposure is in your water. And the thing you want to do, if you have it, it will build up in your blood, and you want to reduce your exposure. So pick the big one first. That's your water. If you want to know that answer, you have to have your well tested. Okay, so what are PFAS used for? Well, you can see them all up here. Non-stick cookware, there's our Teflon pans, grease-proof fast food wrappers. So every time you get a McDonald's wrapper and it doesn't have grease all over it, that's because that wrapper has PFAS. And sometimes it comes off the wrapper and into your food. Food being probably number 2 exposure route. Stain-resistant carpet. Everybody remember the DuPont Stainmaster carpet with the baby laying on the carpet and sleeping? Oh yeah, okay. Stainmaster carpet has PFAS in it. Water repellent clothing. Anybody old enough to remember Gore-Tex when it came out? Oh my gosh, every rain gear that you wore that made you sweat because it didn't breathe, and all of a sudden there's this super neat fabric called Gore-Tex, and you can go out and exercise in it, and you're not sweating anymore. Well, Gore-Tex has PFAS in it. The new things, cosmetics and personal care products. Yeah, so it's in our cosmetics. Mostly the biggies apparently are waterproof mascara. I'm sure you guys, when you put your mascara on this morning, are very concerned. And I'm sure you're wearing long-lasting lipstick because apparently if it's long-lasting, you eat it. Okay, not good. How many people use dental floss this morning? Okay. Do you like the stuff, the waxy kind that glides? Oh no, that's got PFAS. Anybody ski? No skiers. I had one in the last meeting. If you wax your skis, it makes you go faster. And the people that professionally wax skis have some of the highest concentrations in their blood. So it's in ski wax. Household polishes, waxes, cleaning products, paints, and inks so they can go on evenly and flow. Firefighter foams, we've all heard about this. Oil and gas drilling standards. So if you add surfactants so they're slippery and they move, they have PFAS in them. Semiconductor and communication cables to improve performance You guys have heard about that chip factory that's coming over close to where I live, right? One of the things that makes those semiconductors so good and so fast is PFAS. Insecticides and insecticides, same thing. You spray it, you want it to spray quick and slippery and easy. Yeah. And metal coating processing. So when you do chrome plating, they do it in great big vats and they induce an electric charge and the chromium goes into the air. Well, then all the people were exposed to the chromium. So they actually made you put PFAS on top of the vats so that it's like a film on top and the chromium doesn't go into the air. So it does have some good things. So I had to put the microwave popcorn up there because I'm known as the microwave popcorn lady that gives talks. Because I always tell people, if you don't remember anything else, do not feed microwave popcorn to anybody you love. Why? Okay, well, because I told you it's in wrappers. And then you have the butter in the bottom, and that butter gets really hot. It heats up quick, and it leaches all the stuff in the bag into the butter, and then it evenly coats the popcorn for you with PFAS. I saw a study, they finally came out with one about a year ago that says if you eat microwave popcorn every day for a year, it increases the PFAS concentration in your blood by 65%. So I used to buy it from the Boy Scouts. I buy other things now, but yeah. Please don't eat microwave popcorn. Okay, so where do you find PFAS in the environment? Well, I think everybody figures out it's in groundwater. Otherwise, why would we be here? It's in springs because springs are things that where groundwater comes out to the surface. Okay, it's in surface water because it can either come out or be directly discharged by an industry. It gets stuck in the sediment. Okay, in those streams. Now it was in the air. The air is in the Arctic. How did it get in the Arctic? We don't have a bunch of factories in the Arctic. So it's actually in the air and it circulates on the air currents. And so you will find it in ice cores. You will find it, oh yes, the latest thing about I don't know, a month ago now, is it's raining PFAS. So the concentrations in the rain are actually higher than what it says that we should be able to drink and be safe. So it's in the rivers. It's in biosolids. You know what biosolids are? Think sludge that farmers put on fields. So it comes out of your wastewater treatment plants. It gets concentrated. It gets stuck on the little tiny particles. There's a really sad story of a guy in Maine who had dairy cows, third generation, and he's an old guy, who his cows walked around and ate the grass and they had a bunch of PFAS. The milk from the cows became adulterated. You can't sell adulterated milk in the United States. And he really loves his cows. I mean, if you talk to Fred, you just, you know, he likes his cows like my dog or, you know, my kids. And yeah, so he's losing his farm. The other thing you don't think about it is that little corner there. You see that picture? I will tell you that is the corner of my closet. And I had to sit there and not dust for quite a while so I could have a picture of household dust. Do you think it's in household dust? Would you ever really have thought that? So if you ever need an excuse to want to clean your house, get rid of the dust. Because I will tell you that it's going to be the kids that crawl around on the dust and the carpet that are exposed more than you or I. But it's in the dust and then it's in the air in your house. Okay, so that's pretty scary. So where's it found in the environment? Well, if it's in the soil and you water it with contaminated water, it's in the plants, it's in invertebrates, it's in fish. They actually have fish advisories. Don't eat the fish, it's got too much PFAS in it. There isn't any in Ohio that I'm aware of, but it's out there. It's in cow's milk. We talked about Fred's cows, bird eggs, fruits, vegetables. People used to call me and ask me, is it in deer? Can I still eat deer meat? And there didn't used to be any studies. So I used to say, well, I haven't seen any studies, probably okay, but not so much anymore. If those deer are walking around and they're drinking water from a contaminated source or they're exposed eating plants, then that deer meat also has PFAS. Okay, so let's run through this. How are you exposed? Number one, drinking contaminated water. That is your source regardless. Eating contaminated food. So fish, food raised in contaminated soil, food watered with contaminated water, food rained on by contaminated rain, and leaks from food packaging. Popcorn. Working with PFAS in the workplace. So if you work in an industry, manufacturing, you're a firefighter, your chances of exposure and usually your concentrations in your blood are much higher. Okay. Some stain repellent and water repellent clothing. So carpets, upholstery. If you ever used to have your carpets cleaned and you always wanted that stain resistant stuff, so it did, yeah, that's all PFAS. Cosmetic, so you can actually accidentally ingest your lipstick, mascara. From shampoo, so it's in your shampoo, it's in almost every lotion, it's in sunscreens because they all want to flow evenly. Okay, but the special risk is for babies and toddlers. So it comes from mothers across the umbilical cord into the baby. It comes from mothers through breast milk to the baby. If you mix formula with contaminated water, it gets in the baby that way. And then those babies, they run around on rugs and carpets and upholstery. And what do? Ever seen a baby that didn't do this? Okay, so everything they pick up with their sticky little fingers, okay, goes in there so they eat it. So their risk is generally higher than ours. Okay, let's say it's everywhere. Got it. We're exposed everywhere. Got it. What are the potential health effects from PFAS? So here we go. Increased risk of cancer. I mean, that always gets everybody's attention. So this is kidney, testicular, liver, and prostate. Okay. Now, most of these health effects are only from PFAS and PFOA. And maybe they've studied about 5 or 6 others now. Remember, I told you there are 12,000 of these chemicals. Okay, so these are the things that are coming out of a real small group, and they're finding that are affecting people, or they could affect people. Again, just because you're exposed, it's like catching a cold. Just because you're exposed to somebody that has a cold doesn't mean you're going to get it, but certainly your chances are higher. It's the same thing here. Okay, some people have better immunity, some people have better resistance, some people don't eat as much or drink as much, but these are all documented health effects. So thyroid disease, ulcerative colitis, high blood pressure and preeclampsia if you're pregnant, increased cholesterol levels, lower antibody responses to vaccines. We're going to talk a little bit about that because it's what's going to drive this non-vaccine response is going to drive some of these numbers lower when we talk about numbers. Lowering your chance of getting pregnant by lowering low sperm count, sperm quality. So it's going after the reproductive system. Smaller head circumference, decreased birth weight, shorter penises, interferes with hormones, early menopause, chance of obesity in women, and effects on growth, learning, and behavior of infants and children, and changes in liver enzymes. Okay, well, that's long enough to make me concerned. Can I drink in my water if I have anything in my water and feel comfortable? So I want to go through history. So, and this is recent history. In 2009, the US EPA set what was called a provisional health advisory level. And they only set it for these 2 things, PFAS and PFOA. Remember, those are the things that are found in all wood, okay? And 400 parts per trillion for PFOA, and for PFAS, 200 parts per trillion. Parts per trillions are pretty little. I'm going to put that in perspective in the middle, but just remember 400 and 200, and I'll make all these units the same, okay? That was based on acute exposure. So how much can you dose me with once or twice or 3 times, but then I don't get exposed to it again. Okay, so you're going to throw a bunch at me. How much can you throw at me in my water and I'll still be okay? But not a lifetime, not long term. By 2019, the US EPA said, okay, not fine, no adverse effect. So not acute, okay, not high, but if I just drink it for a lifetime, what happens? And that's where they set this 70 number that stuck around for quite a while. So you were thought to be okay if you had less than 7 of PFOA or PFAS or the two of them added together. Okay. Then came June 15th, 2022. And I want to tell you a story. Anybody here seen Dark Waters? It's the story of Rob Bellot. I see a couple nods. Well, I met Rob Bellot about, he was working on the case down along the Ohio River, and we were spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C. at that time with about, I don't know, 30 people from industry and their attorneys, and then Rob Bellot and a general manager from a little tiny system called the Little Hocking Water Association that had 12,000 people, and me. Okay, we were going to these meetings at US EPA, and you'll laugh if you've seen the movie, because I told my client, oh, he works for Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister in Cincinnati. Don't talk to him. That company only represents those big companies. So I don't know what he's doing on our side of the table, but don't talk to him. And I actually did say that. Took a couple meetings before I realized that Rob Bellot really had changed sides of the table. He really was on the table, the side of the table that was exposing all these PFAS things. So this year I had the pleasure of going to a meeting in North Carolina. So this is my story. So I walked into this meeting, it had about 250 people. It was the 15th of June. And I walked in and I saw Rob Bellot, and I hadn't talked to him for a while. And we decided to sit down together, and a US EPA guy came over that's been working on PFAS for 20 years too. And so it's kind of like old home week, and you know, we're feeling kind of old because all these people don't know anything about PFAS. They know more about PFAS than they used to, and we're thinking, well, we couldn't even get 20 people in a room. Now we got 250, you know. And the US EPA guy says, oh, I can hardly wait, because the lady from the Office of Water in Washington is going to make a big announcement. And Rob says, yeah. And I said, okay, guys, what's up? Oh, no, we have to kill you. We can't tell you. I said, new numbers? And they said, yeah. I said, well, what are they? Oh, no, we have to kill you. So Rashida Fox started talking, and this was in North Carolina. North Carolina has a big problem with something called Gen X. It's the replacement chemical. PFAS and PFOA are being phased out. Those are carbon fluorine bonds 8, so they're called C8, carbon 8. And Gen X is a C6. It was thought that if you stripped off some of those things, they had less health effects. So if you went to 8 to 6 to 4 or whatever, yeah. So there's a plant which manufactures the next latest slippery thing, this Gen X. And so she's announcing, okay, 10 parts per trillion, new number, US EPA, drinking water health advisory. And of course, they're in North Carolina. The crowd is going nuts because North Carolina had parts per trillion. So they're all going, yay, yay. And then PFBS is the substitute for PFOS, same thing. And that's 2000. And you can see liver, kidney, immune systems, that they're based on animal studies. Okay. And then she didn't say anything else. She went on and talked about some other. Okay. Well, those are good things for the community. And then she kind of says, oh, yeah, and by we have a new number of 0.004 for PFOA and 0.020 for PFAS. And I'm thinking, okay, so now we've gone from 70 to 4 or 70 to 20, right? And so I kind of turned to Rob and I said, oh, well, that's pretty good. It's down to 4. And he says, no, Linda. I said, what do you mean, no, Linda? He says, she didn't say 4 parts per trillion. She said 0.004 parts per trillion. And my mind's going, 4 parts per quadrillion? And 20 parts per quadrillion? And the first words out of my mouth are, well, there isn't any laboratory that can detect that low. And he says, that's the point. I said, like what point? And he says, any concentration of those 2 things are no longer acceptable. And I'm going, oh, okay, I got it. The problem is there's this current laboratory detection limit. It can only detect down to 2. So when we test your water, you're going to have something 2 or a little bit less. But these numbers are going to be 0.004 and 0.020 for those 2 chemicals. So makes a big difference. Okay, so I promised you the perspective. 1 part per trillion. 1 is 1 drop in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I can't even fathom that personally. So 4 parts per quadrillion is 1 drop in 5,000 Olympic swimming pools. And 20 parts per quadrillion is 1 drop in 1,000. So, I mean, I have swam in a Olympic-sized swimming pool. I can't imagine 5,000 of them. Okay, and 1 drop. Okay, so that's what supposedly can cause health effects lifetime. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So when Ohio EPA tested all those public water systems, they wanted to come up with what they called action levels. And so that top one there says December 3rd, 2019, and that's what they were using when they went out to sample all those public water systems. So you can see that 70 for PFAS and PFOA. They use 700 for Gen X, which is that C6 that we just talked about, 140,000 for PFBS, 140 for PFHXS and PFNA. So you'll kind of get used to these things because you'll see them on your results, okay? If by March, which was before that June 15th meeting where I'm sitting there with Rob Lott, we still had the 70 because the 70 wasn't out yet, but you can see they were going, Gen X was going down to 21 and PFBS was going down to 2100. And these are still the limits that Ohio EPA is using. These are all action levels. None of these things are enforceable. These are designed to help you figure out if you're exposed, could you maybe expect to have health effects associated with it. So just because they're here doesn't mean that you're violating any standard, that anything has to be done. These are action levels and US EPA's are health advisory levels. Same thing, non-enforceable. Okay, and that makes a big difference. We talk about a couple other things. Okay, so I get this question every once in a while, and I wanted to make you smart. So here's your geology lesson. So sorry, you kind of had your chemistry lesson. Now we're on to geology. You know, I'm a science geek. What can I say? So let's say we stand on Jackson Road, okay, and we cut a slice down through the earth, and we stand back and look north. That's and so on the left is the Stillwater River. Okay, you kind of see the little dip with the blue things on it. On the right is the Miami River. See the little blue things? So that actually is the sand and gravel that's in those valleys. And you can see they have a little bit different shape and they're a little bit different, but most people that have public water supplies go after those sands and gravels. Gives you more water, faster, big water. You, however, are in that thing that looks like a brick. And that is meant to represent limestone. And I want you to understand that your water comes through the cracks in that limestone. So if you just like think about putting a drop of water somewhere and it has to flow like those bricks do, okay, that is going to explain to you why some people will have PFAS in their water and other people won't. And you might be right next door to each other, okay? So it's a three-dimensional problem in that some people's wells are 40, 60 feet deep. Other people's wells are 100, 120 feet deep. But it doesn't matter necessarily how deep they are. If you intersect a crack that has PFAS in it, you will have PFAS in your well. Okay, so it's kind of complicated to figure out where the cracks are and how it's going to flow. So people ask me, well, where does everybody else get their water? You don't get a ton of water out of this particular limestone formation. And that's why every once in a while, some of you have dry wells or you complain about, oh, I don't have enough water. That's because you didn't intersect the right cracks, okay? Or maybe you did, okay? All right, so how do you get your water tested? Well, if you didn't sign up, even on the way out, we will still take that. You can use that little QR code. You can use the thing that came in your letter. Those references are on Butler Township's website. So if you know people in the pink area, go next door and tell them, hey, you missed the meeting, you still need to sign up. Even if you didn't pay attention to that letter, you still need to sign up free. So we are going to be testing with a US EPA approved PFAS drinking water method 537.1. It tests for 18 PFAS. So you get your water tested, you're going to get this 20-page report, and you're going to go, huh? Yeah, okay. So we're going to test for 18 of them. We're going to use an accredited laboratory, and remember these detection limits. These are 2 parts per trillion. When you're looking at PFAS and PFOA, we're going to be talking about that 0.004, 0.002. And oh yes, I did tell you, it would make it an important thing understood that there were an interference with vaccines. So that 0.00 PFOA wasn't based on an animal study, it was based on a human study, and it was based on what's called the most sensitive endpoint, in this case, kids. And they found that if they gave kids vaccines, the higher the concentration of PFOA in their blood, the bigger the chance was that the vaccine wouldn't take. So even if you shot the kid up with the DPT and it's tetanus in particular, they wouldn't have an immunity because their body wouldn't produce the antibodies. And actually, depends on how you think about vaccines, but during COVID, they actually did a study. People that had high PFAS had less antibodies for the COVID vaccine too, just FYI. But this was based on kids and tetanus, and that's where that 0.004 comes from. So somebody asked me that last time. Okay, so testing water. Okay, we're going to ask you questions. Do you have a water softener or other treatment? I wish I could tell you your water softener will take out PFAS, but no. We'll determine the best place to collect your sample, preferably before any treatment. I was kind of like this purist. I was always raised, you want something before it goes through something else so you really know what you have. So our goal will be to usually test an outside spigot, which might not go through your water softener. Let the water run for 10 minutes, not very fast. Fill out lots of paperwork. Wash our hands with this really portable laboratory grade soap that by the end of the day, I want to see anybody's hands. Then we're going to try to dry our hands enough to get them in these blue nitrile gloves. And then we're going to pour some water from the lab into another thing. We're going to fill up 2 bottles from your spigot. We're going to put them on ice and send them to the laboratory. The turnaround time usually is somewhere just above a month to get them back from the lab. But if they've got tons, it will be longer. They have warned me because I still don't have a firm date to give to them. And right now it's about a month. Okay. So what you're going to see in us is we're going to turn on your water. We're going to open up a bottle. We're going to put some water in and put it back on. And you're going to say, well, yeah, I could have done that. Well, yeah, you could have. But because PFAS is everywhere, remember, food wrappers, it's in your makeup, it's in your shampoo, it's in your clothes. So no fabric softener, it's in your fabric softener. So it makes it soft. Slippery. So you're not going to see us have any clothes that have been washed with that. No food wrappers, no waterproof papers, generally no sunscreen, clearly no makeup. Anything with fluoro in a name we will be avoiding like the plague. Glass bottles for sample collection. Got to avoid those because it sticks to glass, believe it or not. And all these little things, you know, FEP, ETFE, all those things, we're not going to be touching any of those things. And we're going to be wearing cotton that's preferably, or clothes that's preferably cotton that's been washed at least 4 times. So, okay, so pay no attention to our oat clothes. We'll send the lab results directly to you. If you gave us an email, we'll email them. If you don't have an email, we'll mail them to you. You get a laboratory report that's 20 pages, but really we'll give you an email or a letter that explains what it means. Okay. So we'll tell you if you exceeded any US EPA health action level, tell you if you exceeded an Ohio EPA action level. There are not numbers for all those 18. Remember I told you Ohio only has 6, but US EPA only has 4. Okay. So if we see other things that you might want to compare numbers to, there are other states that have adopted what's called MCLs, and they're enforceable. So if you live in a state like Michigan, there may be numbers where they would tell you, oh yeah, if you've got this, you need to seek a water supply that's not this, or treat it. Here, everything is advisory. Everything is at your choice and your discretion. We will also provide results to Montgomery County, and if they're above Ohio action levels, we'll also provide results to Public Health Dayton and Montgomery. So this would be my opportunity. Jason, where are you? There you are. This is Jason Turner. He works for Public Health Dayton and Montgomery County. He's the one, well, things about construction standards for your well, things about registered contractors if you want to put treatment on, and lots of other things, I am sure. So if you have any questions, health department related, Jason said he'd be happy to try to answer this for you. Okay, so if I have PFAS in my water after I get it tested, can I get it out? And the answer is yes, you can. So process of developing this contingency plan, we have it done. It's out for internal review, and Butler Township will put it on their website once it's done. It will talk about these point of use filters, everything from refrigerator filters to things you put under your sink or whatever, to whole house filters, and some things about bottled water that you probably want to know. And in general, these filters use granular activated carbon or reverse osmosis. So there are 2 warnings up here. One is if you install a whole Ohio Department of Health registered contractor and get a permit. So whole house, the contractor comes and puts in the system, he should be a registered contractor with the Department of Health. Okay. The other thing is, if you're not a maintenance type person, okay, you need to be a maintenance type person, because the manufacturer will tell you how many gallons you can treatment system you put on, whether it's one you stick on the sink or one you stick on the whole house. And if you don't media, whether it's the little membrane in your RO or the carbon and the other things, it actually can build up and you'll get higher concentrations on the other side. So you're going to think you took it out, but indeed you're not. So you have to pay really close attention to those manufacturers' instructions. Okay. All right, so I thought maybe you might want to see something that was one of the recent PFAS developments. And this actually is kind of a really big deal. It's gotten a lot of press. So the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine just came out with recommendations that clinicians, think doctors or other healthcare professionals, should offer PFAS testing in blood to patients likely to have a history of elevated exposure. That has never been out there before. There's been a lot of push for it, but the idea is they're going to make recommendations now to doctors which say, hey, if you think your people or your patients are exposed, they specifically mentioned firefighters, commercial airports, military bases. We don't have any of these around here, right? Farms where sewage sludge is applied. We probably don't have any of those left in Butler Township, but other areas where PFAS contamination have occurred. So this is a really big thing. I know it doesn't look very big, but it is. Okay, so let's just say you wanted to get your blood tested, not part of this project, but for information. So the Ohio EPA website has information on laboratories and costs for traditional blood testing. In other words, you got to have a prescription. You got to go to the phlebotomist. You got to go, oh, okay, fine, get it out. Okay, I'm done. And they estimate that the lab costs are plus the cost for drawing and shipping the blood. That's what's on Ohio EPA's website. And I'm sure they did some research before they posted those. In the beginning of 2020, there's a brand new test out. It's a finger stick at-home kit. So if you really want to know what's in your blood for $3.99, cash and carry, you sign up online, you follow the directions, you mail the test kit back in, and you get a code to view your results online. So my son-in-law happens to be a firefighter in Fairborn, and the mother-in-law and me says, "Okay, here, fine. Here's a kit. I got it for you." And he said, unprovoked, which I thought was kind of cool. "This is pretty cool. Whoever did this put a lot of thought into it." And I said, "Well, would you like to share your health results with me?" He says, "Oh, I'll share them with anybody," which I don't put up. But anyway, it was very, very interesting and enlightening. And he said it was really easy to do. I don't even like to have my finger poked, let alone, so yeah. The big thing that everybody is going to tell you is what you really want to do is reduce your exposure. So let's go back to, how do you reduce your exposure? Your number one exposure is, you guys all know this by now, water, okay? Your number two has to do with eating food that's contaminated. And you may or may not know all that, but if you see a fish advisory, if you go somewhere out of the state of Ohio, and you go fishing, you should check. Make sure health departments usually have those fish advisories up. Stop eating microwave popcorn. We already know it's going to make your PFAS levels go up. And then explore reducing exposure to household items and products that contain PFAS. There's a bunch of websites out there that are green websites that'll tell you if this has it in it or that doesn't or whatever. And then nonstick pans, still my favorite thing, but if you heat them up and you heat them up without food in them in general, they get really hot and they release PFAS. So the trick is never like to use a Teflon pan like for searing or heating it up without food in it. That's the alternate recommendation, or don't use a pan that has PFAS coatings. There's lots of alternatives out there now. Okay, so schedule. I'm almost done, promise. Sign up for free sampling testing ends October. So if you're lucky enough to come and have cared, and please care about your neighbors. If they're in the pink area, please have them sign up too. I had somebody ask me, well, but my neighbor's really old and that person is not particularly, like good with the computer. There's a phone number on the letter that went out from Montgomery County and Butler Township. One of those ladies out there, she answers all those phone calls and she will just take your information for you. You don't have to fill it out on the computer, okay? And we'll come test your well. Okay, so technically, according to the schedule, your sampling is scheduled for between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but subject to change. Personally, I really don't want to be testing your wells between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd really rather test them before that. So we're trying to make that schedule happen so that we can do that. But worst case, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, you will see us. If you're signed up and you're eligible, you'll get an email or a phone call with the date and the window of time, kind of like the repairman guy. You don't have to, it's an outside spigot. If you want to be there, that's wonderful. We'll give you the date and the time. We're going to be trying to do like streets, like together. So we're going to march down the street. Pardon?
Long as it's above freezing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I collected lots of samples when it wasn't above freezing. How's that? But maybe you really, like I said, you have to be careful with your outside spigots when it's freezing. Yep. So results likely within a month, pending laboratory workload. will email or mail the results. The contingency plan that we talked about that tells you about the alternate treatments. Technically, it's scheduled for November 1st on the website, depending upon the review process, and I'm sure the county will try to make that happen quicker too, if that's possible. And then watch for it because it'll post. Okay, so based on some of the questions we get over the phone and some we had the last meeting, here's the most frequently asked questions. Does my water softener remove PFAS? Okay, so I answered that. Anybody remember the answer?
No.
Oh, okay, great. We're all sleeping. Thank you. Can I get my water tested after a treatment device for free? No. This is for raw water in the pink area. If I'm not in the pink area, defined by the Ohio Department of Health, remember they're the ones area, can I get my water tested for free? No, only you people in the pink area. If PFAS is found in my water system, will the government make me install treatment? No. These are health advisory levels. There's nothing that's mandatory. Can I be forced to hook up to city water? I'm not doing politics here now. Can I be forced to hook up to city water? No, you cannot. The health department can't make you do it. There aren't laws to do it. No one can make you hook up to city water. Okay. All right. So 2 things. Outside, if you haven't signed up and you want to sign up, there's people that will help you on your way out. You're free to go. That's the technical end of my presentation. Now we're in questions. Thank you all for coming. And now I'll answer questions. Yes, sir.
So is PFAS or C?
So PFOA and PFOS are C8s. Okay.
I don't know if you follow you know, environmental, what you said you did, like about 18 years ago in the Marietta area,
Absolutely.
and they test our blood for C.
Yes. 70,000 of you.
Yeah, and they gave me money for it. So
They did $400 right before Christmas.
I don't know if that was.
So he has $400.
Was that like DuPont paying for that, or was that some kind of grant?
That actually was part of a settlement agreement that Rob Lott negotiated as part of what's called the C8 health study. So they put together like a lot of smart people and did a lot of studies, and some of these health effects came out of that health study that you guys got your blood tested for. Do you remember what your number was?
You know, I gotta go find that paperwork.
You should go find that paperwork.
I know, I'm curious now.
Yep. Yes.
We use bottled water for drinking because we have water here in the well. How do I find out what's in the bottled water?
Okay, so part of what we did for the contingency plan, like I said, that's in internal review, was look at bottled water. If you want to do quick and dirty, if you search on the internet, Consumer Reports tested quite a few bottled waters. Okay, and there was another study as well, but the big one probably that has a lot of the brands that you might think of using is the Consumer Reports, or you can wait until the contingency plan hangs on the Butler Township website. There'll be data and things to look at. Okay. Yes.
How is it determined where the pink area stops? Because it stops right before our street.
Okay, so the pink area was actually defined by the Ohio Department of Health. Okay, and it's my understanding that the funding that was got for this project out of the federal infrastructure money, which is pretty cool, bringing money back to Ohio from our federal taxes, was limited to the pink area that was defined by the Department of Health. Yes.
Well, shoot, related questions to that. Number one, how many houses in West Wells are in the pink area?
I believe that there are about 289 properties that have been identified. He has a well, but there are 289 properties.
Yeah. What's your expectation of how many of those?
Well, the grant will allow for testing all of them. So it'd be great if there was 100% participation. I don't think I've ever seen 100% participation anywhere, but I know Where's Mike? You want to give your interested in having these things tested?
Because I live there as well. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Number?
Yeah.
But why would you, what do you have to do that?
No, I just, one of the reasons that I've heard Mike say he wants these tested so he can get a really good idea of what's out there. The more people that have their water tested, you don't get an opportunity to have your water tested for free. I will tell you, this is expensive. These lab tests are very expensive. And if you have to pay to have your water tested, which a lot of people have done in this area, it is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I did. I had three of them, three wells in one house, and what, $1,500. So, but more data points in general is the whole thing. Obviously, we're trying to get to that, and it will go outside of the pink area. Maybe we just don't know until we get Well, past. that leads to the next question. All you're focusing on, and I understand the contract is for the pink area. So you test all those houses are a certain number. Is there any consideration for it says, hey, we found some more than we expected? 5 houses, 1 house, whatever. And now we're going to go into the other area. Because, and here's why it's important to probably most of us, we have trustees who we were told that the American Recovery Act was going to pay for all the testing, not in the pink area, all the testing. And now we're being told something else. So there's a lot of people, I suspect, this is everybody here maybe, who sits there and says, for example, I'm about 3/4 of a mile from Hollywood by way of profiles. Nothing magic about that little pink line that says water can't come through here. And that pink area, you can find out, doesn't test. For example, about fissures and cracks in the ground could mean it pops over into my neighbors, right? And it's outside the pink area. I want to know from somebody, maybe it's trustees, and I understand you're bound by contracts.
I am.
Maybe it's the county. But is there any plan at all? What is the criteria that says we're going? Is this it? One and done? That's it? Suck it up, buttercup. What is it?
So I'm told that this phase of the project is this only, and I'm not aware of anything that goes further. So that's my personal.
Anybody else back here?
Yeah, so the discussion, we don't know until we get more data. We gotta get the data then to go to the state.
Is 1 house test positive? Okay, now we're going to go further. Is it 5 houses? What's the criteria that says, hey, we need to look at more?
We'll know that after we get the data forms. That's
Don't
not
you know
one
what the
subject.
threshold would be?
We don't know, because this is the first phase of that we're getting information. We've got to gather the information to be able to go through it.
I'd like to know, maybe it's for the next trustees meeting, what happened to the promise about everybody's well is going to get tested free in the pink and the blue area? So we can defer that to a trustees meeting.
You know, it's brought it up that there were people on our street that got letters for the free testing.
Mhm.
Understand why the pink stops right before our street was, we did have people that were.
So now, from a legal standpoint, the result of the test is made public. Am I going to know my neighbors? And if my neighbor's going to know mine, is it made public when I put up my house on the market? Somebody needs to go out there, or they start looking at things, or it's just private.
Requires us to send them, you saw, to the Montgomery County. And if they exceed health action levels to Montgomery County Public Health, Dayton and Montgomery County.
So what does the county say about that? Is that public information that's available? They work for with public money.
I don't know if Jim.
We're not in.
I think we first need to clarify, we're going by the 70 part per trillion number at this juncture. So I don't know how many houses we'll see under or above that number. I think that's really a conversation that we're gonna have once we get there. We have a great relationship with Butler Township. We will continue to work together down the road, maybe not in the scope of this project, but you know, you are Montgomery County residents.
I think the reason why it's not quite that important to me on candor, because I don't anticipate selling a house. I bet there's a few people in here who selling their house, and with this cloud hanging over everybody in this room, in this whole pink blue area, look, good luck selling your house in the blue area. You didn't get your water tested, did you? That kind of thing. We need to wrap this thing up and move on. How to resolve that. Water right within probably 6-8 months from that day. We have Union water comes all the way down to Meeker on Fricker. Wouldn't take a whole lot to make this problem go away.
20 million. That's what we're trying to do.
If we have a state representative who can make that happen, that kind of money, I think we can do those kind of things. Otherwise, you're sitting here for what, 6 months, a year, whatever it takes. The big machine has to turn through and make a decision. And there's going to be some people here who want to sell, and maybe some people who didn't want to buy, and they hear about this. This is a live like this for a year. More. We look to our elected representatives in the county to make some decisions here and move this thing along a little bit fast.
To assist the township. It does with the recommendation would be on Butler Township.
Oh, wait. What's that mean? Did they
That-
have to make a decision to ask you to
You'll
come?
have to ask the township that question, but they will be provided the scope of this contract with the recommendation from the ordinance.
Because I think that what my neighbor is saying here is that if pure water could be brought, whether it's by the county, by one of the other entities that's on either side of this situation, if there was pure water that was available to everybody, they could make their own decision about whether they wanted to hook up water or not. But I think that it's good government to provide for water. I mean, that's certainly one of the things that we ought to expect from our government.
Yeah, look, Bruce, that's what we're trying to do. End goal is to have it to where it's accessible, make a decision, but to where we can try to. Because we've got a lot of people saying, if you run the water, we're not going to get the.
And we would have to work with a local jurisdiction or Montgomery County, because as a township, we don't have a public water source. So we would have to, and if there was any funding that we were going after, the county or somebody else would have to be seeking that funding, because we don't have public water as a township.
To cut a deal with one of the entities, I think it would be close. Yeah.
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 And the county, I think, is already working towards that. They know that to put this together, they're gonna have to work with water from you.
And I think as part of this study too, I mean, you're evaluating the adjacent, the water sources that are available and saying what would be the best opportunity as well.
And I did want to follow up really quickly about your public records question. Anything that's reported to the Department of Public Health is not considered a public record. So if it's reported there, that information doesn't leave their office.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Some conversations about this for the group to know. Is there any requirement of being annexed to the city of Union? Because generally, most cities require annexation before they can provide you water.
Yeah, and our goal would be to work with the adjacent entities and provide that source, working with the other jurisdictions, but not to let that happen. There are people in the township that do choose to annex to cities and, for public utilities and things like that. But our goal would be to keep you residents in our township. We want you to stay. So as long as the adjacent jurisdictions are willing to work with us, that would be the goal.
Well, that's the main reason we went through working with the county when we first started looking at this. And Bay Area was more than happy to do this for us, but they were going to annex it. Union was more than happy to do it, but so we started working with the county. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. The work that this group has done, they've been great to work with, and it does take a long time. Every meeting and every phone call. So, and I know it's
right there with you. I mean, I don't know why would that PFAS stop at my fence line?
Right.
You know, so, you know, and I'm,
An interesting point, I guess, too, with the water line to Allwood, you know, the funding was given by the state to install that water line, so Union built it, but it was paid for by the state, so they couldn't require residents to annex in order to connect. We said that we would pay reimbursement for the tap-in fee, so that they didn't have any requirement from Union to annex, but we've only had 2 people on that whole line that has decided to connect. So that, I mean, when you're paying $3 million and getting 2 people, it's like, that's crazy. So.
Yeah, but one of the jewels of Butler Township is Allwood. Are they gonna wind up taking that from Butler Township as well? Because I think that's tragic. That we could not do something more to save the jewel that is Allwood.
Yeah, there's no
Especially
plan.
over a water issue. This is ridiculous.
With all due respect, I'd like to get us back on the testing.
Yes.
My concern is, so, okay, you come by and you test the pink area and you say, hey, guess what? We didn't find anything. So I'll go back and smoke a cigar or whatever we do. But that water doesn't stop moving on the ground.
well, another concern is now that they lowered that testing. So I'm not sure even city water can pass. So, I mean, and that's the thing that we talked to Linda about. They basically said, by this group that's in here and everybody, it's gonna be evolving now because they just came out with that in June. And that's not a final number.
So US EPA has said that they will be releasing a draft rule to make limits for PFOA and PFAS, those 2 that you keep hearing about, by the end of the year. And that hopefully they will be adopting an enforceable number by the end of 2023. Okay. Rumor on the streets is it won't stay as low as the 0.004 and the 0.020 streets. And if you'd have told me that they were going with 4 parts per quadrillion before I sat in that meeting, I probably would never have believed you either. So I kind of have given up my soothsayer role here, and we're just waiting for US EPA to come out with a draft number that will be enforced water systems. Okay. Yes.
So you came out and tested our wells about a year ago. And on the paperwork that we received, does it tell us that I'm not sure how to ask this question. Does it give us the information on PFAS that was the old standard? Is based upon the old standard? I mean, apparently it would be based upon the old standard, but.
Okay, so if you look at, usually it's page 6 or 7 in your laboratory sheet, or even in the email that I sent to you, it will tell you that you did or you didn't meet the standard of 70 or whatever it is. And then in the old days, we had, states like Michigan that had a number that was enforceable for PFOA of 8 parts per trillion. And so if you clicked one of those other numbers that one of the other states that have adopted that were enforceable, I wrote you and said, oh, but if you lived in Michigan, you would be protected in a different way. Okay. So if you have questions, you know how to get me, call me and I'll help you interpret whatever. But you will see 2 numbers on there. One says a detection limit. Okay. And it's one of those numbers that's somewhere between like 1.4 and 2.0, depending upon the run in the lab. And that will tell you, and then you can look at that and see how it compares to these new numbers, if that's what you want to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the reports are, I mean, as soon as I got mine, and she said it to me, I was like, Linda, what is that? It's like 35 pages, come on, help me out. So she would walk you right through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I thought it was, I could just send you one sheet. I just thought it was important that you got all 20 so that you had all the data, so that you had everything that was the science, okay? But then I tried to, in the email, do a shorthand, which is what we're gonna do for the people here that are in the pink area. And again, it's daunting. You're gonna get the same kind of 20-page whatever if you're in the pink area and you're gonna go.
Put the slide back up to the pink area.
Sure. Okay, let me do this thing. I can explain that the pink area addresses were sent to the county by the health department, and that's what they went with. So these are the mailings that went out in that January or that July 1st, 2020. Had a letter then is still on the list. Okay, so that was generated by the health department and used by Montgomery County to generate the addresses that are sitting in the pink area. Okay. All right, let me see. How about you?
Just, are these chemicals for input in business around here?
There's not been, to the best of my knowledge, any definitive study which would say exactly where these are coming from. Remember that there could be a lot of potential sources. They're everywhere, remember? Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I missed it, but concerning the city of Union water currently and the city of Vandalia water, have either of those water supplies been tested or will they be tested, and did they pass, yea or nay?
The Ohio EPA has what's called a PFAS website dashboard, and they have on their website the results from each one of those 1,500 plus public water systems that they sampled. And if they sampled them again, they have current results. So if you go to that website, you will be able to look at Union's results for PFAS. And I haven't looked specifically for Vandalia's, but it should be there too if they tested it. And that would tell you what those 6 PFAS were when they tested them, like in the middle of the pandemic. Okay? Yes, sir.
On the same note, get the water test, or did the city supply the water test?
So the water is going to be tested at a certified lab that we are contracting with, and they are accredited and certified to run PFAS.
Who collected what I'm asking?
Okay. Ohio EPA actually contracted, they called level of effort contractors. We were not one of them that went out and tested those. So they hired consultants to go out and collect those tests. And I don't know too much about what labs they used or how that was done, but the results are on the website.
Yeah, I just asked for the collect.
Yeah, that one I'm not good at, didn't do that one. Yes, sir.
Is there anything else in the water that can affect PFAS results? You know, standard things that the health department checks for, like nitrates, bacteria.
Okay, so he's pretty quiet. If you guys didn't hear, he asked a really good question, and that is there anything else that like the health department might test for in my water, nitrates, bacteria, chlorides, some of the sulfates, other things that would affect the concentration of PFAS in my water? I can answer that for a couple things. If you have a lot of organic matter in your well, which is not something that's typically, sometimes you can see levels of PFAS that are any scientific data that shows those other things either will increase or decrease. There is some data out there for pH, okay, but not as definitive as I would like to be able to quote. How's that? Does that help?
I guess what I was wondering is it beneficial to chlorinate the well before the test, or else?
So it won't make much difference. When we come out and we collect these bottles, These bottles are going to have a white powder in them called Trisma, and it's designed to take any chlorine that you have out of the water sample. So chlorine is generally not something that will affect the concentration. And if it were me, I just want to know what regularly was in my water, what came in, so I would know what to do.
It's just that some people may be on different cycles of their yearly intake of water.
Correct. I understand. So. Yes.
So I heard you say that 30% participation rate. And when I talked to you earlier today, you said only, I asked if not everybody signed up to do it, it's those who are not in the PFAS, then we get our vote. So where does the money go? If not everybody participates and has.
I don't have the answer to that one. I wasn't involved in getting that grant. Only is my understanding that that grant is very specific about that pink area, which means these people are golden and then the other people are not.
So it just goes back into the pot. When we use ARPA funds, you have to be very specific on in the term. In this contract. And then we turn around. I'm sorry.
Get up there, Tiffany.
Would you like to answer that one again, Tiffany?
I'm not hearing what did you say?
Get up to the microphone.
Be nice to her because you know she's getting ready to have this other baby, and sometimes standing up is not as easy.
I don't mind. So this wasn't a grant, this is actually funded by ARPA funds. So that's why Linda has to be so specific with the contract. The ARPA funds, you have to have a very specific contract that you have to follow saying this is what we're spending the money on. And if it's not all spent on this project, it just goes back into the same pot it came out.
So I have a question on this blue pink level. Maybe over a year ago, some people randomly got chosen for free testing on our blue level. So based on those tests, is that why we got put with blue level? Just a few houses that came back with their levels. But yet, if some people are in the pink, that might be clear, but their next door neighbor have high levels. What's to say that some of our houses in the blue might be clear, but the next door neighbor might not?
And we get to blame the Ohio Department of Health for this one, okay? So I can't tell you, okay, so I'm sure everybody knows that the Ohio Department of Health has ruled, let us know exactly which concentration from which well and who, okay? So they're holding all that confidential, which is, you know, an advantage to you as well. So I can't exactly why they chose. I know that they chose wells that were outside that pink area to test. They actually did 3 separate testing. They started where they thought, okay, and then based on that, they moved somewhere else, and based on that, they moved somewhere else. So they did in theory, the step out, whatever, and exactly how they put that pink together, I can't answer. But this is, you can blame this one on the Ohio Department of Health, and I don't know what else to tell you, okay?
The black diamonds, excuse me, where Allwood is, right across from there. So that's what we like to.
I won't tell you how many people, you know, they're super nice that have called me not as a part of this project, but, you know, to their wells. You know, I'm one door away from whatever. And they said, you know, I've been told by my project manager who reminds you how specific I have to be under ARPA funds. And I have been told that there isn't any room for, and so therefore there is no room for moving, and for that I apologize. Okay.
There is, I was just gonna make a comment too. So Ohio EPA, out of the testing that they did in the blue and pink area, they wouldn't tell us the locations that tested. I mean, Ohio Department of Health and Ohio EPA. They wouldn't tell us, you know, locations, but they did tell us any of the samples that they did in the blue area were non-detect. So that is why it's an advisory area. And the pink area was where they actually had detections, but nobody over the 70.
Yeah, so you saw the slide earlier that said there were 5 detections in the pink area out of 49 wells. And that's what I was told by the.
But nobody over 70 except for Alden.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just to clarify something. Questions here. The tested the homeowner. Will that be?
You'll get actual numbers.
Yeah, it's very detailed.
Very detailed, actual numbers coming straight from the lab, okay? Okay, I know you guys are all tired, so without objection, I will adjourn. Ask further questions if you want to talk to us or sign up outside, please do if you haven't. And I thank you, everybody, and we'll be here for a little while until Erica throws us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I